Okay, welcome. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. We're doing chapter 37, Siman Lamed Zayin, talking about Tvilas Kalim. So, immersing our food vessels into the mikveh, and we're up to number 5. So we spoke about if we acquire a food vessel from a non-Jew that's made out of metal or glass, it needs to be immersed. So as we said, either it has to be, if the materials were owned by a Jew, even if a non-Jew formed it, or if it was formed by a non-Jew, even if a Jew, sorry, there's two things. There's the owning of the material and there's the forming of the material. So if even one of them were done by a Jew, then we don't need to immerse it. We don't need to toivel it in the mikveh. That. Okay. So we have this, and then we also said if we get a used utensil, then from a non-Jew, so we need to kasher it. So the immersing and the kashering are two separate things. And if we need to kasher it, we need to make a kosher, then we need to do that before we toivel it. Okay, so now we're up to number 5. So im shoyel oseicha klimagoy. Now, you didn't buy it, you borrowed it. If you borrowed it or rented a food utensil from a non-Jew, einod sarich tefillah. You don't need to immerse it. Now, although we mentioned last week that electrical appliances, so Moshe Feinstein gives a head to, he says that since they only work when they're plugged in, they're considered connected to the ground, and therefore they don't need to be immersed. But another way of getting around that issue of appliances that you can't immerse in the mikveh, electrical appliances will ruin them, is if you would give it to a non-Jew and borrow it back. So when I was in yeshiva in Sydney in Australia, there was a non-Jewish administrator there, and he must have owned about 45 different toasters and another 100 countertop ovens and various things, because everyone in the entire community, when they would buy something, they gave it to him as a gift, and he happily lent it to them. So that's what happened. Now it's not as straightforward as it seems, by the way, because even if he lends it to you, if he would pass away, then his children inherit it, and maybe they don't want to lend it to you. You'd have to give it to them. It's could create issues and various things. But that's another thing that was widely done. But let's say not to get around the toiling electric appliances. Just in general, you borrowed something, so it's kosher. Either it's never been used, or maybe something's only usually cold, or you kasher it. But you don't need to immerse it. The im shoyel l'soicha kalim and mechenvani Yisrael. Now, if you borrow or rent utensils from a Jewish storekeeper, Jewish merchant. So let's say he sells or rents plates. Now, we're presuming they haven't been toiveled, or perhaps they haven't been toiveled. So it's tzrichim tevila beloy bracha. Now we have to toivel them, but we don't make a bracha. V'tenvani dia zois, the mish yiknem achkach, shliat bilim shenis bracha. And the merchant should then inform the people who purchase it in the end, purchase it afterwards, that they don't need to immerse it a second time. Right, so you have this person has a store, I don't know, he's a party hire, so he doesn't, and he rents it out to someone, so the first person to use it needs to immerse it if it's owned by a Jew. Okay, Bob, number 6. Yisrael machzik beis Yitzchok. You have a Jew, and they make a glass. It's a glass blowing a factory. They make glass. But Poilim Hem Goyim, and the workers, or at least some of the workers, are not Jewish. Kemnasim Shama, Sirich Tefillah Beloy Bracha. He rules, the Tishrei rules, that they should still be immersed without a bracha. Other commentaries, authorities disagree with this, and the general consensus is that if the factory is owned by a Jew, in other words, so the materials are owned by a Jew, you don't need to immerse it. Now he's going to give the other way, where well, same idea, but instead of owning it, you privately own materials. So Zion number 7. Yisrael shenosan kesef or shalminim ateches l'uman goy shaselo keli. So a Jew owns metal, or he owns gold, or he owns something, and he takes the raw materials to a non-Jewish manufacturer to make something out of him. Or if the utensil is damaged, that it can't be used for its purpose. So in other words, it became no longer utensil, and he's taking it to this non-Jew to repair. So gan came to Villa Bracha. So it also needs to be immersed without a bracha. But as I said, most other achronim, who the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch, they take a different view that if you own the material, it doesn't have to be immersed. Test number 8. So as we said, it's only food. It's you only have to immerse a utensil that is use of food that is ready to be eat shoroi as is the achloi miyad immediately loshim tikum achlo without any other preparation. So, if you had certain bowls, let's say, were only used for raw meat, certain containers only used for raw meat, and after they were cooked, while they were cooked, and after they're cooked, they'll use something else. Then you probably need to tie with them. So he's going to give an example. Says, but the iron tools used to prepare matzahs, the rolling pins, or to cut the dough, or the needles that are used to sew up animals when you put stuffing and you sew them up. Kesim and the like, and it's tevila, they don't need to be immersed. However, the knife that you shecht with, or a knife or a utensil that you used to skin the animal, so even though you're using it before the food is ready to eat, but they are such a utensil that you could use it for ready to made food. Same way, use the knife to shecht, you could, in theory, use it to cut the steak when it's cooked. Similarly, the trays in which matzahs are put, they need to be toiveled without a bracha. Now, tripod, which pots are placed. So the people make a open fire, or fireplace as they used to cook, and they put the pots on top of this tripod on the fire. Since the food itself does not touch it, does not need to be immersed. So probably an equivalent of this today, oven racks. So even though they come out, you could slide them out of the oven, but most people don't put things directly on the oven racks. It's you put a baking dish or something, or a baking tin on the oven rack, so it's not touching the food directly, so it doesn't need to be immersed. So that's the type of thing that you don't. But a spit, metal spit, which you cook the food on directly, so it goes through the food, or the skewers for shish kebab or something like that. Sark tefillah b'bracha, they have to be immersed with a blessing, right? Because they're dealing with the food directly. Next in Yesh Oimrim, there is an opinion. The Chizuk is gedolim. Large glass utensils, like large pitchers. Shein shoisim metoichem, rachshmichem behemes mashkois, lies behem metoich. You don't drink from them, but you use them. You pour from them into cups. So large pitchers and various things. So there's an opinion like a shivik suda that they're not considered meal utensils. When and they don't need to be immersed. But there's other opinions. They do need, because even though you're not directly using them for your meal, but you bring it for the table for everyone to have to take their drink. So it's secondary. So since we have opinions both ways, so what do? We should immerse them, but without making a blessing. Okay, and whenever we have things that we immerse that a blessing, the ideal thing is to immerse together with something that needs a blessing. Often, not always, but sometimes people have a few things that they need to toivel. So you make the blessing on something that you do need, that does require tevilah, immersing in the mikveh, and you have in mind everything else. However, if you're going to immerse on its own, then you would not make a bracha. Okay. Test number 9. Rechaim shel pilplim, pepper grinder, and similar things. Tzrichim tevilah mishum mateches. They need to be immersed because they are metal. Avol atachtlin shekiblas tavlin, but at the bottom piece, the receptacle that holds, it catches the spice once it's been ground. Kivin shel 8, since it's wood, or nowadays is usually plastic. Ein sarich tevilah does not need to be immersed. Now, coffee grinder should be immersed without a bracha. So the reason for this is that it's another step away. Spices you might put directly onto food, even though often there's another step. The pepper goes into the soup and you cook it in the other pot, but you could put it straight onto food. So the grinder is considered the direct, food processing. Coffee, after you grind it, you have to do something else with it. It's not. I don't think anyone takes ground coffee beans, puts it in their cream cheese or something. It doesn't work that way. So therefore, it's toiveled without a bracha. The coffee grind, if you only use it for coffee. Okay. Yud. I mean, today many people, or say majority of coffee grinders are electric anyway. So as we said, we can rely on Moshe's head to that, since it only works when it's plugged in. It's like connected to the ground. So something connected to the ground does not require tevilah, does not require immersion. Yes, David.
What about spices that are spicy, like garlic or garlic powder, or onion powder?
So when you buy the powder, this is another thing. Maybe we'll go today. Most of them are in plastic. So let's go to, let's say, wine. So when you buy wine, it comes in a glass bottle, and chances are the glass bottle was not toiveled. So you're using this utensil or your pickle jar for food without toiveling. And the reason you do that is that in reality, when you buy the bottle of wine, you don't care about the bottle at all. It's going straight in your recycling bin as soon as it's empty. You're not really interested in the bottle. It's just logistics. In order to be able to bring the wine home and be able to take the wine without it spilling all over the floor, it needs to come in a container, which happens to be the bottle. But you really have no interest in purchasing the bottle for the bottle's sake. So it's like we didn't even take it. This is someone who does want the bottle, right? So maybe before they use the wine, they have to pour into something else and toivel the bottle and put it back in. If they're really going to use the bottle and reuse it and refill it, some people when they after they've eaten the pickles out of the pickle jar, they use it to then make another batch of pickles themselves and another batch and another batch. So those people, well, for sure they have to toivel it before they use it the other time. But it could even be they're going to have to take it out to they have it. But if we look at the things we buy today, let's say you buy spices. You mentioned onion powder. I mean, generally you buy it, and then when it's empty, you throw it away. So you're not really. So besides that, it's plastic, and there's not really an obligation to total plastic. I mean, some people do to be strict, but besides that, it's plastic, so it probably doesn't need it anyway. But you have no interest in the container. You're just going to throw it away. It's just logistics. It has to come in something, otherwise the powder will end up all over the floor.
I was told that there's a difference between hard plastic and soft plastic.
Um,
I think the
yeah.
guy
So
said that.
we mentioned last week or 2 weeks, I think it was when we had the last lesson. I think it was last week. So we said um, the decree on glass to toivel glass is so glass does not require immersion from the Torah. But our sages said it's similar to metal. Metal, when it's broken, it can be melted down and repaired. And metal is something the Torah tells us needs to be immersed. And since glass has the same property, so there was the decree, Talmudic, Mishnaic times, that glass also needs to be toiveled, and since it's a rabbinic decree, there's a bracha and everything, and that's how it works. Now, Chazal didn't make the decree on plastic, and plastic is something that's because it's a non-natural material, is not really makabel tumah. Now, there are some people who say that since the hard plastics, perhaps also similar to metal, that you could melt it and fix it. So there are people who toivel plastic, but I think that the general consensus is most people don't. Combination that I'll give it way off the topic, but let's just give it an example of the principle I want to say. So we know we have a decree of kitnius. On Pesach we can't eat kitnius. So there's different categories of kitnius. There's different things that become kitnius. Now, one of them is if it can make a bread. Now, when the decree of kitnius was made, potatoes were unknown to Jews, at least. They were in the Americas, and I guess there were people somewhere eating potatoes, but no one who was keeping Pesach had potatoes. So therefore, they weren't part of the decree. Obviously, you can only theorize because it didn't happen. So you can't say, well, if it would have happened, how would it have happened? Because no one can know that for a fact. But you would presume if potatoes were around at the time when the decree for Ashkenazim and Kitnius was made, it would have gone on potatoes as well, because it can make a bread similar to chametz. So when potatoes came around, why was it not considered Kitnius? Basically, because it wasn't part of the decree. You can say what you like, if it would have been the decree, and it probably would have been, but it wasn't. And it was a staple, particularly at Pesach time. And I mean, today some people I can't, but some people can afford to go to these Pesach programs and they spend several $100,000 in the whole family. But for majority of Jewish history, since we've had potatoes, potatoes has been an affordable way to have a non-chometz food, and people can have it. But it's it wasn't part of the decrease, even though it probably would have. We say, well, it wasn't. So this is how most people view the plastic. Possibly, if hard plastic would have been around the times of Chazal, when they made the decree on glass, they may have possibly made the same decree on hard plastic, and because it could also be melted, and maybe it's similar to metal, could be, but they didn't because there wasn't. So although, as I said, there are people who type of plastic, there are people, but it's more of a, say, custom. I'm not even sure chumrah is the right word, as stringency is the right word, because I'm not sure it's halachic stringency, but it's definitely customary, or they. So if someone has been toiveling hard plastic till now, don't stop, because doing something with the intention of that's what you do, it's probably potentially has the strength of a neder, of a vow. If someone felt that that's the the right thing to do. But if you didn't toivel hard plastics till now, I don't want to tell anyone not to do something stricter. By all means, we should, but it's not something that I would be putting on my list of priorities. Tzeres Yemei Teshuvah, so we're always looking for ways to improve and to be stricter. And I guess you could add total and plastic to that list, but I could think of a lot of things higher up on the list. We can, if we just look at the davening example, all the different things that we can learn the
And don't
translation
make a
of. And
bracha.
sorry.
And don't make a bracha.
Oh,
You
correct. If
don't
someone does
don't want
total
to
it, that
say
we don't
you
make
don't
a
want to
bracha.
say the shame for no reason.
That's right. For sure, without a bracha. Okay. So test number, Yud number 10. So tzrichim lashkiach koydem tefillah. Be very careful before we immerse, before we toivel a vessel. Shir klinoki has to be clean. So what does that mean? Lo love shum lichloch or chaluda. There cannot be any dirt. There can't be any rust. He says in the brackets, Ach reshim chaluda or shachruis ba'alma shadark v'kach ein makpidim alav ein mazik. Says if it's just a stain. When we say that rust is a problem, it's talking about rust that if you scrape it or you rub it, substance comes off. That's the issue. Today, I mean, generally people are using metal or stainless steel or something like that, so you don't really have those same problems as it used to be. But if after you've rubbed off the rust, there's some type of, it's just coloration or discoloration, maybe a better term. It's just a stain. That's not a problem. It's only if there's actual rust substance.
I think the term is encrusted.
All
If
right,
it's encrusted with
that's what
rust,
is a problem.
right? That when you
Okay,
can actually feel it, it comes up off the
yeah,
metal already.
that's right. And today, although not mentioned the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, but today we have stickers on everything. Barcodes and prices and the brand and where it's made and all these little things. So all of those things as well. It's all got to come off. And sometimes it's very hard to get them off. They're really stuck. It's almost like you got to buy some toxic chemicals to get off some of these things. But anyway, and you have to immerse the entire vessel in one shot. Shekula has to be totally immersed in the water, all in one shot. Right. So if we're going to have large vessels, you're going to need a large body of water. Right. It's as I said, once it's so large that it's not movable anymore, then it's considered connected to the ground, even if it's not actually physically connected. So, example, those large vats they use for making wine commercially. But anything you can have in a house, or probably even in a restaurant, you're going to need to toivel. Not really that big, but they might be too big for your average kalim mikveh. So you might have to go to the ocean or something. Now, kli sheyesh lo yad, if the utensil has a handle, so not only the part of the utensil the food goes has to be immersed in the water one shot, but the handle has to be immersed with the body of the utensil as well in one shot. Everything immersed at once. Now the person, most people when they immerse things, they don't want to lose it. Right? Could be occasionally you get one of those gifts and just one look at it and you're saying, please let it get lost in the mikveh. But generally speaking, the majority of us, what we toivel, majority of the time, we want to keep it. So you want to hold on to it. Now, since the whole thing's immersed in the water and you're holding it, that could potentially make an issue. So what do you have to do? You first immersed your hand in the water, right? So you have a wet hand, and then you hold it. And generally speaking, and then you don't hold the utensil as tightly as you can. The just an average grip. And so what's going to happen is this average grip is not watertight. And the water of the mikveh is going to join with the water that's on your hand, that's between your hand and the vessel, and it becomes part of the mikveh. So it's immersed. Sometimes people, they put in a plate, they let go for a second. It's you can do that also. Also depends if you're immersing in the ocean and the waves can take it out. It's not always a good idea. Or if it's a very deep mikveh that if you do drop a mistake, it's very hard to get it out. People should also try and avoid using a mikveh that people use. Right, so it's that's why they normally have a kalim mikveh designated. The last thing you need, someone drops a glass utensil and it shatters on the floor of the mikveh that people are going to go in bare feet. God forbid, so it's people try and really avoid that. A men's mikveh, by the way, besides that, there's lower standards of cleanliness generally, are not necessarily fully kosher mikveh. So that's another issue. But even women's mikveh, people have to really be careful. They shouldn't take it in. Now, if you're gonna toivel the utensil, you're gonna tie a rope to it, right? So let's say, I guess today we're a little bit spoiled. We have most larger communities have these mikveh kalim, but when you have to lower something into the river, so some of those people, they lie down or sit down on the bank and they tie a rope to the fry pan's handle and they lower it. For example, you're toiveling in a well, natural well, of course. So you have to be careful that the rope that you've tied on is loose enough that the water's going to get there and the whole thing will be immersed. So today, if you're going to tie with things like that, fishing nets are good. Fishing nets are good, both for toiveling in a river, and also if you're toiveling a lot of things at once. Instead of especially cutlery, instead of doing one knife or one fork at a time, if you've got a large amount, you put it in the fishing net. Of course, you have to make sure it's not too tight packed in, otherwise the water's not going to get everywhere. And if you put it in, you give a shake around, all the water will it'll work. Easier than tying a rope to it. Yud Aleph, number 11. Im matzbil kalim. Sorry?
People use fishing nets now.
Yeah,
They have
that's what
like
I'm
these
saying.
very wide water thing, and you drop it in, and you make sure you
Yeah,
shake it around so it's
so
loose in the net and it doesn't go anywhere.
yeah, it's it's done it often. You know, don't want to go off topic, but it's an interesting thing. We had a many years ago, 97. So we lived in a place and we had a minion in the house. We had a shul in the house. It was going well, and it was I guess it's like sort of like Florida in the respect, you had the canals. You had the canals that they had, and where we were, I think they'd extended it, so they excavated and allowed the canal just to flow in and became part of the canal, and you know, it wasn't a river front; it was a river back. Right, the back of the house was on the canal, so people, had boats and things, but we uh we used we used to use it as for mikveh, right? For Chayil and Kalim with our fishing net. So we also used to, take the kids and we go swimming. So when they built it, they made nets that sharks can't come from the ocean. It's all salt water. But seemingly a baby shark got through, but it didn't stay a baby. And so various circumstances, we it didn't work out financially, and we had to move. And then, literally, like 2 weeks later, everything that we'd been working on fell into place, and we probably could have stayed there, but we'd already gone somewhere else and different things. And I always wondered, it seemingly was so good and it seemingly so needed. I wonder why Hashem did that. Not that I ever thought that I could understand everything as Hashem does, but I saw uh, about a year and a half later, it was on the news that so there used to be a fellow lived on the other side, and he used to every morning swim. He used to do laps of the width, backwards and forwards, just swim. And he unfortunately was eaten by a shark and killed by a shark. And I thought to myself, I used to go there with the kids. We used to take the kids swimming. We regularly. I mean, not daily like he did, but um, we then appreciated that Hashem orchestrated that we had to move somewhere else. Um, you know, often
Yeah,
we get blessings from Hashem. This particular case, we got to see how it turned out to be a blessing, but sometimes we don't
yeah.
see it, and we actually think it's the opposite of a blessing. But really, everything Hashem does is good, and just
Rabbi,
yes,
Yeah.
what happens if you take the kalim out to a river to tidal it, and all of a sudden, you have a net, you're dropping the a pot in that you're tidling, and all of a sudden a squid, gets into it, or a crayfish, or something that's trafe, a trafe of fish gets in there, crustacean of some sort.
yeah.
What happens then? What is the
So it's
what
not
do
going to
you?
make a kashrus problem because it's all cold. It's all cold. Maybe in Tveria hot springs. It doesn't really get that hot even, but in theory, it has to be pretty warm, the water, to make any issue. So all these things, providing that was immersed, when you pull it back out, you just pour it out and goodbye crayfish or squid. If you really want, you could table again if you're worried that it didn't get tabled properly because something was touching it.
Mhm.
Stopping the water from getting to the entire vessel. But it's not going to create a kashrus problem with just river water. Okay, Yudalf number 11. Imatbel kalim shapim sar. If you immerse a vessel that has a narrow mouth, so you have some type of water bottle or something. You have to make sure that it remains immersed in the water until the entire vessel fills with water. So sometimes what you might do is take the bottle and put it under the water and hold it there, really let it get full of water, then finish immersing it. All right, so you got to make sure, because when something immersed, it has to be immersed in all of it, including the inside. Because the has to be covered with water both on the inside as well as the outside. Okay, Yud base number 12. Cotton the katana and the manimatfulus. So boys and girls under the age of bar and bas mitzvah, they can't be entrusted with immersing the vessels. Right now, if they did do it properly, it's not a problem. The problem is we can't trust that they did it properly. So if they're helping you and you're watching, and you maybe you've got a large amount of things, and everyone is immersing, and you're keeping an eye on them, and you see that they really do immerse it properly, then there's not a problem. But you can't send the kids on their own to go immerse things and bring it back. All right, okay, number 13, Yud Gimel.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I this might seem an uncomfortable question, but there's frogs and there's turtles in the waters around where we are currently.
Yeah.
And they always leave refuse in the water. So do the ducks. So I mean, if that's the case, how does that in any way have an adverse effect on the toiling of?
So it depends. If the water is so dirty that even a dog wouldn't drink it, then it's not good for a mikveh anymore. If it's a dog that's gone for a run would have a drink, not to matter a dog that you left in the desert for 3 days, God forbid, but normal, a dog in its day to day, which they're quite happy to lick up most rivers and different things. So then it's not a problem with the toiling. You might want to wash it really well afterwards before you use it.
Oh
but
yes.
it's not going to create the problem. But if it's so dirty that even a dog wouldn't use it, then it becomes problematic.
But then these canals that are around here in Florida, they're really not a problem as long as you wash it very well when you take it out.
Yes, and look, and even the man-made keli mikvahs, and they got chlorine and different things, so presumably they're clean. But at the end of the day, I think you really got to wash wherever you. When after you toivel your vessels, I think you really want to wash them well before you use them.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Thank you.
No problems. Yud Gimel 13. Now, you're not allowed to immerse a utensil on Shabbos and Yontiv. Now, the im shachach latbilu mekoidim. If you forgot and you don't have anything else, right? If you have something else, you use something else. But you got this problem now. You've got a utensil. You forgot to immerse it before Shabbos. It's now Shabbos. You can't immerse it. What do you do? So you So you give it to a non-Jew as a gift and borrow it back from him. But if it is a utensil that's good for taking water, and you are in a place that has an eruv, or it's a place that you can carry, it's in your yard or something. So what do you do? So let's say you live with an eruv, and you've got the body of water in the eruv. So you could take your utensil, collect water from the well or the river, whatever it is, and bring it home and use it. And so it ended up you toiveled it without, unofficially. The bottom line is it got immersed in the water. You don't make a bracha, but a person could do this because it doesn't look like you immersed it. Today, maybe it does because we don't really collect water from the river or the well, But it just looks like you're filling up your water bottle. The reason for this is that from a Torah perspective, you could tovel on Shabbos or Yom Tov. But one of the malachas we have is makabah patish, is the final fixing of something. In other words, the whole thing is good. It's ready to make. It's ready to be used, and it needs one small adjustment. So makabah patish literally means, hit with a hammer, with the anvil. Just one. It's all ready to go. It needs one little bang, and it's all good. So this comes in general category called tikkun keli. So if you have a vessel, you have something that's all ready to use, you can't do that on Shabbos. You can't make it ready to use. So rabbinically, that's why we can't immerse vessels in the mikvah on Shabbos, because like we have a utensil and we're making it till now it was not usable, and now we're making it usable. So that's why we don't do it. And as we said, if it's something that could be used to draw water, and you want to fill your bottle, so to speak, in the river, and then bring the drink bottle home, and you toveled it while making it look like you're just collecting. Of course, there's only a place where you can carry. So either it's Yom Tov, or for Shabbos there's an Erev, or if you have a well in your property. A lot of places here have wells in Phoenix for irrigation, but it's they have it. Okay. Any questions on this chapter before we move on to the next one? All right. So the next chapter, chapter 38, is there's different types of food if made by non-Jews are problematic, and different foods for different reasons. So for an example, one of the ones we're going to mention is milk. So milk, the primary issue was we're worried that non-kosher milk could get mixed in. It used to be to get the principle straight. Let's speak about before non-mass produced commercial times. But so people had farms, and even though they took milk from cows and different things, or goats, most farms had a pig. And it was your garbage disposal unit. And non-kosher animals, you can't make cheese, right? It doesn't spoil as quick, and it can't become cheese. So pre-refrigeration, it was pretty much standard practice to mix in the milk of a non-kosher animal, and it would keep the milk a little bit longer. So for the milk, the primary concern was kashrus, and we'll speak about each one as we get to it in this chapter. But the bread and other foods, and we'll see what type of foods, has to be of a certain significance. The main issue is intermarriage. Right? Today, bread is a whole nother story. Today, your standard bread made in a bakery is we'll loosely call it glatt treif. Right? It's not just a little bit treif, it's really treif. Because what they use for the shortening, what they use for oil, and they also for the pans, the cheapest and most effective vegetable and animal oil blends. And so your average bread in a supermarket is treif. In the old days, though, they used to mix bread and water, flour and water, and they let it rise, and then they baked it in a large oven that was usually communal and only for bread. And if it wasn't, because it was coals and so hot, things were kashered. It ended up being kashered in between. So in concept, bread was bread, and most bread was kosher, ingredients wise. But bread is the staple of a meal. I mean, again, not nowadays. No, they used to say, if someone was they didn't wash from Shabbos to Shabbos, they were like a high spiritual level. They just ate very basic things. Today, no one washes Shabbos to Shabbos because the pizza's Mazonis and the bread is Mazonis and everything. Whether it really is Mazonis, have it at a meal, that's another story. We'll get to that chapter, God willing. But today not washing doesn't mean anything. But bread used to be the staple. So if everyone can just eat together, this led to intermarriage issues. Now a lot of these decrees were made during the time of Greek occupation in Israel, right, pre-Hanukkah, because this was really the first time that Jews and non-Jews lived together in relative peace in large numbers. Right before that, yes, in the first Beis Hamikdash time, the first Commonwealth, we'll call it, there were non-Jews who lived in the vicinity of the Jews, but they were enemies, were at war. And if they came into your town, it was a raiding party. No one sat down and had lunch together. Right? That's and in Bovel, although there was certain mixing business-wise, but essentially the Jewish community lived independently. So the first time that we really had these issues was, we'll say, beginning of the Mishnah period, and we had non-Jews who lived there. Yes, I mean at Hanukkah got to a certain point where we had war, and they wanted to kill us, but that was primarily because we just didn't want to be like them. There was a period of time where people lived in relative peace. There's also the decree of wine, although it's not this chapter; it's a whole chapter on its own. But wine, the issue, okay, you have yain nesach, real yain nesach, meaning that they offered the wine as libation to their gods, their idols, and that was a standard practice. But commercial wine is not normally like that. But essentially, we have a decree on non-Jewish wine. Why? Because again, people. I mean, today in bars, probably the average drink isn't wine, but it used to be. If you could have your bread together and you could have your wine together, and if as long as the sheep got shechted and etc., and got roasted over the same spit, and everyone came and sat and ate that together, or let's say a fish together makes it simpler, then this leads to assimilation. So these decrees was primarily made for assimilation. They said today with commercial practices, it's really kashrus as well, but
Woody Allen, many, many years ago, it might lead to dancing.
Yeah, so Siman Lamed Ches, chapter 38. Hilchas, the laws of pas nochri, non-Jewish bread, b'shuli nochri, non-Jewish food that was cooked by non-Jews, and v'chalev nochri, and milk that was milked by non-Jew. Okay, so Aleph, number 1. Asur chom echol pashel nochri. The sages forbade eating bread made by non-Jew. Now, v'yesh mekaymus shemakilim melachim pas menachtoinim nochri, b'makom she'ein sham nochrim she'Yisrael. There are places where they are lenient, in other words, the circumstances can be lenient on bread that was made by a baker when there's no Jewish bread available. So the difference is when you eat bread that your neighbor made, okay, again, let's presuming everything's kosher, which today probably isn't the case because they're cooking in the same oven, really good conventional oven that they cook their treif meat and different things, even if they didn't put in oils. But in concept, if it could be kosher, with your neighbor, see, eat together, this leads to assimilation. They go to a store where it's a commercial relationship. I give money, you give bread. It's not the same thing. So there are circumstances, and we'll see, where we can be lenient about bread from a bakery when there's not, if there's no Jewish bread, or afilu yesh elashena pas yafa kamoze, or there is Jewish bread, but it's not the same quality. Jewish bread, it's Yankel makes some bread for sale, and it's very amateurish.
It's too expensive.
Well, that could also potentially be an issue. We didn't get to that yet. But the bakery makes this delicious, fluffy, nice, wonderful bread. But a non-Jew, a householder, let's say, for like a better term, a regular guy, his bread, lahiya, there's no leniency. Except we just said there's no leniency, and then we're going to give a leniency. What's that? At a time of great need. Misha Badera, let's say, for example, someone's traveling. It's not like today we got supermarkets and on the highway there's the pit stops and you fill up with gas and you can buy a whole bunch of kosher things, not necessarily intended to be kosher, but they have a hechsher on it. Person was traveling and he's stuck. Im yachal hasik pas kosher. So if he's able to get proper kosher bread made by a Jew, so chlahantim at parsa, he has to travel a parsa. So a parsa, it's probably about a mile, roughly. I don't know, a bit more maybe. So, and if you can't get in that time, let's say he's in this little village, the next town's days walk away, and there's nothing to eat. Right? Because again, pre-refrigeration, the apples, you can only buy them for a month, a year, and after that, they're out of season.
Here it says here that a parsa is approximately 4 kilometers.
Oh, 4 kilometers? Okay, so that's about 3 miles. Okay, thank you. So about 3 kilometers, 3 miles. Yeah, so so that's how far you have to go. Now, we said you can't have a private person's bread. What's the definition of that? It's only called a householder's bread if he makes it for his household to eat. But if they made it to sell, so again, today everything's commercial and big chains and different things. But it used to be people would make in the home and they would stand on the street corner and sell. So if it was made to sell, mikre nachtom afa pishen darka bekach, then it's still called a baker's bread, even though it wasn't necessarily it's not what they normally do. They're not always bakers, just when they're running a little short, they bake cookie, make stuff and sell it. Likewise, the baker, what he bakes for his own family, his own household, that's called a householder's bread and not a baker's bread. The fact that he happens to be a baker by profession doesn't matter. And there is an opinion that if there is no baker, right? So in other words, you can't get any bread. You could eat a private householder's bread, and you don't have to wait for kosher. Obviously, it has to be kosher, but in other words, the Jewish bread. This is how we are accustomed. Now, again, that wouldn't be the custom today. Today, I mean, commercially, you can get so many things. You can get in a variety of stores. But in concept, if a person was stuck, I don't know. I'm sure even in Alaska, the supermarkets have kosher places. I can't really think where someone might be. A Mossad agent in Iran, maybe. I don't know.
Rabbi?
Yeah, Mordechai.
Yeah, isn't there a minhag something that's timely during the Asar made to Shuva? There's some people have a minhag to only eat Pas
Yes.
Yisrael.
Yes. So it's correct. So the accepted custom is that even those who eat bakery bread and the whole year round, during these 10 days, we always want to do extra stringencies. So they try and only have pasisol. Right. So it's one thing. But like even here, let's say, I mean, there is a bakery in Phoenix. I mean, I don't know if you really call it a bakery, but they make some stuff. And as long as you order it, you can get it. But in the supermarkets, there's so much you can get everything pasisol. Bread,
Rabbi?
whole wheat breads, fancy breads, pretzel buns. I mean, it's everything is available here. You would think, and Phoenix is not exactly the bastion of Yiddishkeit. It's not this, it's not a, and most of the stuff that they have here, and what is not for the kosher market. It's regular commercial things that are made somewhere else, a different state usually, and they're made kosher, and they happen to sell them here in Trader Joe's and Safeway and various places, and so I'm sure other places have it as well.
Rabbi?
Yes.
There's also Hadash and Yashan, the two kinds of flour that's used for the bread. And
Yeah.
I know that it's sort of like the, like instead of glatt, it's almost compared like bait. I forgot the name of the other.
Yeah, it's not really this chapter, but since you mentioned it, so Hadash today, according to most opinions, really only applies in Israel. Outside of Israel, at best is a stringency, although possibly some of the Sephardic Shronim was stricter. So sometimes you find Sephardim can be spoke, but for Ashkenazim, for sure, and I would really say for everyone, it's really, in Israel, everyone's going to have to keep it. But outside of Israel, it's really, I don't know, it became the trend. So yeah, you have as became the trend, and to such a point that there are so many things that are far more important. I mean, when I say far more important, I would say, halacha makes a higher priority. So that's an example, Pas Yisrael, or even when we're not going to get to it today, but we're talking about the Chol Yisrael, right? You have to have a Jew milk that was milked by a Jew or supervised by a Jew. So there are certain leniencies that some people have given for the commercial milk and various things, and that's also not going to go according to everyone, as we'll see when we get there. But even if it does, to have that milk is to have regular, we'll call it traditional Chol Yisrael milk, is certainly halachically way higher priority than only having Yashon outside of Israel. And yet you see places that advertise it's Yashon, yeah, but and then it's not the Chol Yisrael. It's I think it's I don't know. It became like the flavor of the month. And again, I'm not knocking anyone, chas v'shalom. People can take any strings they like, and people want to be as strict with anything they like. But really, overwhelming consensus of the poskim of the is that Chadash is really only an issue in Israel. Yeah, that's all right. So I guess we ran out of time for today. So we'll I don't think we have next week. We do? I'm not sure. Could be it's not till after Sukkot. So if we have next week, then we'll see you next week. And if not, we'll see you after Sukkot.
Have a
Can
good
I ask a
Sukkot.
quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I see that this, what I'm going to ask may be getting to like in a few weeks from now. So I have an aide that comes to help me cook my food or to make my food.
Yeah.
So if the aid is coming and we have electric stove instead of a fire stove, and I don't know if there's a difference, but if I want to ask her to cook me scrambled eggs, so is that a problem, or do I have to turn on the fire?
So we're going to see that it applies to some food, not to other food. It has to be important. But either you turn it on, or you're the one who puts it actually on the fire. Generally speaking, you have to do something. Again, actually, Sfardim are stricter with this. Sfardim that the Jew actually has to do the majority thing. But for Ashkenazim, as long as you do anything. So it could be putting on the fire, could be turning it over, putting it on. So best thing is to try and always be the one that turns it on. It's probably the easiest.
Is there a difference between electric coils and actual fire?
No. Once you're putting on, yeah. The only difference is that with the gas, if you light the pilot light, even if they're going to light themselves afterwards, it's not so much an issue. While the electric, once it goes off, it's got to be the Jew who puts it back on because not really pilot light.
But since there's no fire, is that easier?
No, it's the same thing.
No?
It's the same thing. Same thing.
But if it goes off with a pilot, the pilot never goes off. It shouldn't.
No, I'm saying no. But what I mean is, you turn off the hot plate, turn off the actual burner with the pilot. If the Jew lit the pilot, so you can light again. The guy, the non-Jew can relight it. But the stove, I'm saying the electric, where there's no pilot light, so they just got to each time put it on.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Baruch Hashem.
All right.
Isaac.
Yeah.
I once had a pilot light that went out. I was about 10 or 11 years old, and the family went away for a few hours, and I was by myself in the house. And I saw and it was in the middle of the winter, and the heat went on, the heat went off, and when it went off, I went downstairs to look at the fire, and I saw that it didn't go out. So I thought that there was a problem, that the whole house was going to burn down. So I blew out pilot light. And then my family came home, and to make a long story short, they had to call my uncle, who was very handy, and he had to get everybody out of the house, and we opened up all the windows, and he took care of stuff. But regarding pilot lights never going out, I put a pilot light out. Anyway.
Gemachsim Atayva should have a sign sealed delivered for the most incredible year.
Thank you for
and if we don't have full sukkahs, have a wonderful sukkahs as well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Everything you give us over the year.
Pleasure. And anyone's vacationing in Arizona, come join my sukkah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care.
Send pictures. We'll do it with Zoom.